I think that Bitcoin now is traded like any other macro asset. $2 trillion, it's big enough. It's not like it in its own little bubble in its own cycle. I am really curious why someone relatively smart like Trump would do something so stupid. We're coming to the end of this fiat era. It's been over 50 years. I don't know how much longer, it can continue. So yeah, interesting times.
Bitcoin's dominance is shifting in ways you won't believe. Willy breaks down how futures trading crushed the last bull run and why today's spot market resurgence could change everything. But is this new cycle truly bullish, or are we heading for another crash? Stay tuned as we uncover critical insights you need to hear.
It was an interesting cycle, the last cycle. We had a lot of uptake on the futures exchanges. Obviously, the CME came in on the tail end of 2017, and over that time, we had a development in the futures market, effectively trading paper bets on Bitcoin. And the last cycle was very dominated by paper. And this is the thing is that when I do my work, which is looking at what's happening with the transactions on the blockchain, where you can kind of get a good read of what's happening with investors with spot. You don't get the full picture of what's happening on the derivative side of things. And whilst there was a lot of buying on the underlying spot Bitcoin, there was a lot of bets coming in on the tail end of the bull market. I think we touched 70,000 for a second time. And then the amount of paper bets on Bitcoins went through the roof. So in that phase of the market, you don't actually need to sell your Bitcoins, right? If you want to exit, if you're like an investor, a sophisticated investor, you wouldn't sell your Bitcoins. You would just hedge them out and sell shorts on your Bitcoins. And it turned out that you would collect something around 20% annualized yield by netting out to cash. And that's actually what happened. And that tipped the market. And then, of course, the weakness in the underlying crypto side of things, like Terra blowing up, and then a cascade of liquidations and like earn products blowing up, and eventually FTX blowing up. We had a very, very pronounced bear market as a lot of coins got dumped. And so it turned out the bottom of the bear market of 2022 was just after the FTX collapse. And that was when all the paper evaporated. They stopped their shorts and a lot of Bitcoins got scooped up off of exchanges. Some of that was probably custody risk, but I think a lot of it was bought up. And that marked effectively the start of January 2023 bull market. And the interesting thing about this cycle right now is, of course, spot is back in, right? We've had the ETFs come in finally, and that has allowed the institutional type and also high net worth types to buy the ETF through traditional, TradFi exchanges. And so where previously, if you wanted exposure to Bitcoin, there was no real, you had to do offshore exchanges, really sort of grey water, sort of regulated markets. It's sort of regulated, but now you've got, so you could only get long exposure through the CME. Now with the spot, that's brought a lot of spot dominance back into the game, and that's much more bullish for Bitcoin. If you think about bets on Bitcoin, that's effectively debasing currency, right? Because if I am wanting to buy Bitcoin and I have to buy spot like before futures, then someone very, very rare in the world who has Bitcoin has to sell it to me, and they've got to be convinced to sell it to me. But with the invention of someone can say, I'll take that bet with you, and they can sell me that exposure. So it's quite a bearish pressure. It's a debasement on the 21 million finite supply. And so with spot dominance, it's much more bullish. And, so far the cycle has been, I still consider we're in a reaccumulation cycle. People think we're bullish, but actually underlying it in the phase we're in, it's kind of that, if you remember, we chopped around for a long, long time around 10,000 in the last cycle before things went ballistic. We're in that phase of the market, but it's skewed bullish because of the ETF and MicroStrategy. So that's where we are now. And of course, a lot of the regulatory risk around the SEC is evaporated effectively this week with Gensler leaving office. And of course, we've got our first president that's about to be inaugurated effectively today that is pro Bitcoin and crypto, but Bitcoin, that's important. So yeah, and a lot of talk around the strategic reserve. On that boat too, I'm expecting things to crash really hard sooner or later, and it's really hard. It's like kind of like playing chicken with a freight train if you want to time the top. Right now, like I model this stuff and quantitatively. Well, the risk is high, meaning that the liquidity, the buyers, the spot buyers there isn't keeping up with effectively the price action that's happening. So the risk is high for a drawdown, and it could turn on us. I think the shape of the economy is not that great. I think, it's really hard to tell. Like if we're talking over the next, what does it look like over the next year or two, I think we're due for a pullback. But when, and that is quite hard to time, I think. Right now, there seems to be a lot of buying of risk assets. I'm not sure, I really don't know. Like, I think that Bitcoin now is traded like any other macro asset, $2 trillion, it's big enough. It's not like it in its own little bubble in its own cycle now, and we are orbiting macro. So if that turns, Bitcoin will turn as well. And of course, when macro goes up or down, Bitcoin's very accelerated. It's like that on steroids. So, but long term over the next 4-8 years, of course, it's going to continue to outperform every single asset class on the planet.
Willy Woo dives into the last 3 years of Bitcoin's market evolution, pinpointing how futures trading introduced a bearish pressure by effectively debasing the limited 21 million Bitcoin supply. He explains how this led to 2022's brutal crash, fueled by events like the Terra Luna collapse and FTX's meltdown. However, things shifted in 2023 as the market bottomed out, and institutional adoption, like Bitcoin ETFs, brought spot dominance back into play. According to Wu, this resurgence signals a healthier market, but also places us in a reaccumulation phase, not yet a full bull run. With regulatory risks easing and institutional interest growing, the stage seems set for an exciting cycle ahead. But can it last? Stay tuned to find out.
I am really curious why someone relatively smart like Trump would do something so stupid. Because you think about it, like it's a meme coin. There's no underlying value. There's no technology behind it. You mint it on Solana and you trade this bubble. And so we know that. Well, at least we've seen it with at least 16,000 coins that they trend to zero given enough time. So why would a president want to risk his reputation? It looks great now because you've got market capitalizations in the tens of billions of dollars and it looks like he's a genius. But you look at long term, you play the long game, like eventually this thing's going to pop. Like meme coins are the fad of this cycle. Every cycle there's a fad. That's going to go away. And he'll be left with, I don't know how many millions of people that have bought this coin and they'll be going, I lost a lot of money over Trump, right? And he's a president. That's a very privileged situation. So I'm very, very confused with why he chose to listen to probably his advisor. I don't know, but it just seems like that's like a very fast money grift, and I don't see any long-term strategy behind it. I think it's an absolutely stupid idea. Yeah, there's a big risk also to the system here because, like, effectively, a kind of a security-like problem. What is it? 80% of the supply is controlled by insiders. Yeah. That's a security setup. Ethically, that's not correct, right? If you're trading, you're issuing a security, there's a lot of rules to play by. I see that Michael Saylor's going in to have a chat because he's been playing by these rules for, a generation, like 25 years, 30 years. I just don't get it. It's a risk to the system. If everyone's going to say, oh, now it's condoned by the president, and then we're going to have everybody trying to grift each other, like, what does that say to our society? It's like tail end of an empire, let's say. I thought we were going to have a golden age. That's the conversation. And you start your presidency with something this stupid and so grifty. Right. I just don't get it. It's pretty crazy times right now. I mean, probably everyone thinks they're in the craziest of times. Yeah, when money dies, right? We've gone so far. The US, if you look at it, we always think the money printers are going on and we're printing more money. But if you look at what's really happened with the expansion of M2, it's contracted. That's what's caused the bear market. And suddenly the US is paying, is it more than the military budget to pay the interest on their debt? Yeah. And they're going to be bankrupt if the rates don't drop. And so what happens then? Okay, great. Is people who own assets would do fine. Bitcoin probably rally to the millions, but that doesn't help everybody. It only helps those who have assets. This whole thing's, I just don't know what's going to happen. Is there an easy way out, or a soft way out where there's not calamity? So what is it? 1971, we're coming to the end of this fiat era. It's been over 50 years. I don't know how much longer it can continue. So yeah, interesting times.
Willy Woo has painted a fascinating picture of Bitcoin's evolving market dynamics, but the big question remains: will Bitcoin soar to $250,000 or face another steep crash? The road ahead is as uncertain as it is promising. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time.